What if there was a show about traveling to parallel worlds, the same year, the same Earth, only different dimensions? A world where the Russians ruled America, or where your dreams of being a superstar came true, or where San Francisco was a maximum security prison. We started a podcast talking about it, inviting some friends to join us. Now we hope you all come along for the ride.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Fandom Entanglement. We are talking about Sliders, Season 2, Episode 4, which is actually the second episode that aired, Love Gods. I am Damon Sugameli, and this is my co-host, Mike Bloxam.
Hello, hello.
And joining us again is Jan Fennick. Hey Jan, how are you doing?
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm fine.
Hey, Jan.
Nice to see you again.
You as well.
Yeah. So you've been on before, but if you wanna just remind everybody what you've been up to and what you are up to, and
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, I'm Jan Fennick. I'm a writer and an editor. I am in every single volume of the Outside In series, which is through ATB Publications. And in fact, the most recent one, which is Outside In Can Live With It, which is the DS9 book, which should be coming out sometime later this year. I don't know exactly when, but it's just the whole concept of the entire book series is that our editor takes an entire run of a show, whether it's Star Trek, Doctor Who, Buffy, X-Files, classic Trek, TNG, and now we're up to DS9. And after DS9, we'll be doing Babylon 5. And for every episode of that show, we have a separate author who writes an essay of each episode. So my upcoming one is going to be The Magnificent Ferengi. But so we have like 100 and some odd authors in every single book. So that's one thing I'm doing. In 5 days from now, I don't know when this is airing, but 5 days from my time now, I'll be at Gallifrey One, which is the biggest Doctor Who convention in the US in Los Angeles. I run the masquerade track there, and then I'm doing some panels. I'll be on a couple of panels, and then I'm just going to be a fangirl probably for at least one day out of the entire weekend. And the other thing that right now I'm working on a book called She Wants to Tell You. And again, if anybody, I'm not sure when this is airing, but I am looking for women who are inspired or influenced by the Beatles. Anybody who wants to write an essay for me, they can contact me and I'll be happy to talk to them, because I'm still looking for people, especially if you're like an artist, a writer, a musician. I just want to know like how the Beatles kind of changed your life and or kind of set you on a trajectory. So that's going to be through kOZMIC Press. I'm not sure when that's coming out because I've been trying to get contributors for like the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, it'll be soon.
So that's it for now. And I also run Masquerade for Trek Long Island and LI Who, both in New York. So
yeah, I know you're up to a lot of stuff.
Yep. And actually, I will have to remind my my editor that Sliders would actually be a really good series to cover at some point. So
yeah, that would be.
Yeah. Right now, like I said, the only thing I know she's doing, because she doesn't want to get too far ahead, is DS9, and the next one will be Babylon 5. So
Right. All right. So Jan, we've been asking everybody now to do the best Sliders whisper. The Sliders. So
okay.
Yeah.
Slide. All right, hold on. Give me a second. Try this again. Sliders.
Not bad.
Yeah.
I feel like I sound like Gollum there. Sliders. Oh, sorry about that.
All right. Well, it's good to have you back with us. I had asked you when we were talking about what episodes, and I'm like, this is probably an episode that you would probably have some things to say about.
Definitely.
So
most definitely.
That's kind of why I was like, I think you'd be a good pick for this one. So, all right. This aired March 8th, 1996 originally. I think we're going to just do the DVD synopses now, and they're usually pretty spot on. So from the official DVDs, on a world where a biological weapon wiped out most of the male population, Quinn, Rembrandt, and Arturo become objects of desire and are imprisoned by the government to be breeders. Handmaid's Tale, anyone? I don't know.
Yeah,
with reverse.
A touch of A Boy and His Dog, aka Bloods Are Over, by Harlan Ellison. Also a movie starring Don Johnson, which I will babble about more in a minute because into that.
All right, our usual cast is Jerry O'Connell as Quinn Mallory, Sabrina Lloyd as Wade Wells, Clement Derricks as Rembrandt Crying Man Brown, and John Rhys Davies as Professor Maximilian Arturo. So I have some notes, but I think you have more, Mike, with the guest stars.
I have more, as usual. Yeah,
you have more.
Yeah.
Do you wanna take it, Mike, or?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, might as well.
You can take these. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, happy to do so.
Yeah.
So we got our guest stars include Gwyneth Walsh as Detective Specatelli, and I saw the name and immediately realized she was one of the Duras sisters, but I had to refresh my memory on which one. B'Etor, of course, in several TNG episodes, an episode of DS9, and of course Star Trek Generations. And more recently, for me, she was the voice of Doris the Spider on Beat Bugs, which was a show my two older kids loved when they were younger a few years back, which ties in with the Beatles mentioned earlier.
Right. Yeah, I haven't seen it, but my friend's daughter loved it when she was little. So
yeah, it's a nice show that a parent can kind of like not necessarily follow along, but then you get the Beatles music in there. It's pretty good. Yeah, it's sufferable. The next guest star we have is Jennifer Nash as Diana, and she was also on Next Generation. She was the adult daughter Maribor in the Inner Light, who was the daughter of Kamen, which is the life Picard was reliving.
Right. Now I remember. Now I'm like, okay, I got it. Now, I got the episode in my head. I got it. Yeah.
Next, we've got Georgia Emelin, who played Billie Jean, and she has a Quantum Leap connection. She was Gina in the episode Southern Comforts.
Okay.
And then we have...
No, I was going to say, I had noticed, I thought that she looked familiar, and I'm like, and then I saw it somewhere, and I'm like, oh, wow, that was her. She's... It's like, it's so weird because she has like the Australian accent or something, right? So it's
yes, that threw me off too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have John Pennell as David. No notes about John. Sorry, John.
He's an end credit. I don't know what else he was in, but
I'm not sure either.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of with credits. Andrew Guy as Trevor Grant, and he also played Wilson in Eggheads in season 1. And I think those are the only 2 episodes he appears in, but 2 different characters. It would have been nice if they'd made it the same character or something to have that cross-universe connection. But I added a few more. I didn't add everybody here, but just the ones I had comments about. Kendall Cross as Kara. She has time travel connections. She was in 2 episodes of 7 Days as 2 different characters, and she was also in The Butterfly Effect in 2004. Kathleen Barr as the Aussie Guard. This one's fun because she's nearly exclusively a voice actor, including she was Evil Lynn in the 2002 He-Man series.
Oh. I need to watch that
and
again.
She was Dot Matrix in Reboot, and Reboot was a show I absolutely loved as a kid. She has 340 credits on IMDb, and I think 99% of them were voice acting. So she's got a lot of work behind her. The next two were both uncredited in the episode, and the first one I find very strange. Brenda Critchlow was Dr. Elaine Morris from the Repopulation Center. She has 183 credits. Yeah, she was uncredited. Okay. She was not in the credits, and I don't know if that was a mistake or what happened there, but she currently has 183 credits on IMDb. She's done a lot of voice acting and Christmas movies. And in other shows, she often plays a reporter, including a spot on The X-Files. But I saw her face, and she was extremely familiar, but I just can't place where I know her from, unless it's the various roles as a reporter she's had. And the second uncredited person was the little girl who came out of the toy shop. Jessica Harmon is the name. She was in 32 episodes of The 100. Okay. And coincidentally, she was also in 32 episodes of iZombie. I haven't watched either, but The 100's on my list of things to watch. And this was actually her first TV appearance. So nice. Other than that, there were various connections to different Stargate shows and Van Helsing, and amongst the other female guest stars, there was a lot of overlap. So it's kind of funny that these people all worked together on this episode, and then all later potentially worked on shows together in the future. There's my deep dive into the guest cast.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. And this was written by Tony Blake and Paul Jackson. Directed by John McPherson. I don't know how you pronounce it. And we're just on the one world, which EarthPrime.com just calls Breeding World. All right. World. Or I think they said Breeding World, but whatever. All right. So, Jan, what's your first impressions of this when you watch this?
The entire episode?
Yeah, just overall, yeah.
It honestly, it drove me crazy. At one point later on, Arturo goes on about, they don't have, artificial insemination or in vitro fertilization, this, that, and the other thing. But I actually did some research because it was driving me crazy that the way that they were doing everything was obviously through physical sex. There have been artificial insemination, and wait, I will get my notes here and I will find it. The first artificial insemination was first documented in 1790, and the first sperm banks were in the 1950s. In the UK, there were fertility clinics that offered donor sperm in the 1930s. And then the first documented case with animals was in 1780 and was perfected by a Russian scientist in 1899. So it makes no sense that they couldn't have harvested sperm and frozen it, because that's one of the ways that the sperm banks do it. They take donor sperm, freeze it, and then wait for, instead of, basically brutalizing men and forcing them, to have sex at least 5 times a day and take Vegemite and do all these things. So it's just like, and honestly, to me, it just, this kind of felt like, this was written by men, because they just, it was kind of like this weird, not quite incel fantasy, but it was like, this is how women would be treating men, blah, blah, blah. I mean, even down to, there were no toys with weapons because, apparently only men have weapons. And I'm thinking, this is 1996, right? So we had Xena, we had Buffy, we had already had Star Wars and Princess Leia with, guns. Women, even when I was growing up, like my cousins and I played cops and robbers, or, cowboys or whatever. And there were, Calamity Jane and, Annie Oakley and all that. So maybe it wouldn't have been war toys, but just this whole, and then we only have the one guy from Mortal Kombat having a tea party. It was just like, that's like, this is not how, even 1996, at least this is not how my friends and I played. We played D&D, there were a lot of stuff that just kind of was beyond the beyond. And then the little girl having, it looked like a My Buddy doll. I don't know if you guys remember him. Yeah.
That's what I thought it was too.
Because it looked like a male doll, but it was a My Buddy. And I was just like, okay, there's a world without men, but the girl child has a boy doll and not a girl doll. And then also the fact that everything in that bloody toy store display was all like frilly and pretty, and there was nothing like, you would think if there was no men, there'd be more, girls in jeans, dolls and overalls, because women are running the world, right? Women have to do all these jobs. There would be police officers, fire people, firewomen, whatever, but there weren't. It was just like all this like frilly dresses and pretty little things. And I was like, this makes no sense. So between that and also just the breeding program, I mean, the concept was actually interesting. The fact that, and they've done this in other science fiction. There's like Why the Last Man. And I know there were a couple other incidents where basically, anybody with a Y chromosome got wiped out. And we won't go into genetic theory because, there are people out there who have different genetic structure and still biologically men, but or at least they were until January 20th. It's something that's been through there, and it kind of reminded me of Boy and His Dog, because there's a whole thing about when Vic goes down to this underground city where they're trying to, they also have a repopulation program, and they kidnap him, and he thinks he's going to have sex with all these like basically Midwestern, scrub, pretty Southern Belle type girls, and they bring him to a hospital, and they tie him down to a bed and extract semen from him the way that they would like a horse or a bull, and he's absolutely miserable. And they actually, it's actually very funny because the way they set up the machine, and you see stuff dripping down, and he's just like in hell. And it's like, and that was like 1970s movie, but like, so wow. It's not the first, it's not the only time this has happened in science fiction. So it just like was very strange to me that it was like, yeah, you have to service these women physically. And it's like, that's not, it makes no sense because you'd think it would be easier to do, artificial insemination if nothing else. And then the other thing with Quinn and Mrs. Hill's kind of like rankled me a little bit too, because and I'm not sure how to read that, because to me it was kind of sexual harassment. It was kind of exploitation, like, and we don't even know for sure whether Quinn did the deed. I think he did, but it's kind of like nebulous to me as to whether it happened.
Well,
so anyway, that's end my TED Talk.
It's all good. This is kind of how I am, is like, maybe it's just because there are certain individuals in our government right now that are trying their best to turn The Handmaid's Tale into reality. I feel like the episode hasn't aged well.
Yeah.
Because you kind of touched on it, that I like the idea behind this, but I'm just kind of a little disturbed by I guess it's the cavalier attitude that the men had. Like, it's like, this is like no big deal. Oh, this is kind of fun with all these women around, and we have our pick, like, and then it's like they're basically being forced to impregnate women. And if the shoe was on the other foot, women would be completely furious and scared. There's like a double standard. It's like, we're putting the men in a situation. Like, how fun.
Yeah, and like I said, it was obvious to me that men wrote it because it's sort of like a weird male fantasy. I want to service 5 women a day, whatever. And it's like, not if you think about what's going on there. It's just not. And to me, like, it's not really consensual. So there's like consent issues here too. So
Well, Mike, you have a little bit of a different take, Mike.
I guess I glazed over some of that, I suppose. And it was kind of a case for me. We don't know when the history diverged. It's possible that in vitro fertilization, artificial insemination was never really explored. We just know that there was this attack, and that's where this all came from. But it's desperate times call for desperate measures. Basically, it is believable to me that a society would go to such extremes in an attempt to repopulate, because it's now essentially a baby race, if you will, between nations. Because whoever has the larger populations will have more power, typically. depending on, geopolitical issues. But I did find it was interesting that there was this feud between the USA and Australia. And yet you have Mexico there, who's just a stone's throw away from San Francisco, and they have no forced breeding. So why aren't all the men? I guess they are. All the men are trying to escape and get to Mexico, apparently. But it's definitely my favorite episode of season 2 so far. I accept what both of you have said, but that didn't diminish my enjoyment of this one too much. It did to me feel more like how Sliders should have been for the rest of the series. Not maybe this formula exactly, but a good mix of sci-fi, adventure, and humor.
Okay, all right. So before we just break down some of the stuff, this is from earthprime.com. This is what the website says about the alternate history. That years ago, there was a conflict in the Middle East, and the Iraqis released a viral agent that attacked the Y chromosome. As it spread around the world, it managed to kill off most of the men. Those that survived have been held captive by their respective governments in a race of repopulation. Australia was lucky enough to survive with the most men. Iraq ironically succumbed to its own aggression and is virtually male-free, which is an interesting turn of events given the region's suppression of women's rights. So, yeah.
Especially in the mid-90s, so that's
right.
Yeah.
I think it was supposed to be the Gulf War, I think, is where it happened, so...
Yeah, that's why when you were saying before about the artificial insemination and stuff hadn't happened. I mean, maybe it didn't happen in that world, but it's kind of odd considering it's like 200 years later. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the first thing I noticed, I'm watching it, is maybe it just wasn't in the budget to have them jump out of the wormhole. We didn't see them this time. They just kind of landed off screen, or maybe they saved that for the end with that money shot at the end with the car. But I don't.
Also, they had a big cast, so maybe they were like saving money. And effects, so they could pay more extras.
Right.
Yeah. And Wade commented that they were there for 3 days and 6 hours. But
well, it's funny that extended scene just showing the alleyway, if you will, gave me time to figure out where they filmed it. It's it's the intersection of Millbank and Bucket Wheel in Vancouver, which is right near a marina, which Quinn refers to as Fisherman's Wharf, which I found kind of funny because it's obviously a marina full of sailboats. Not
no
a
fishermen.
Port, but
no. And I like that we got the Brooks sisters instead of Brooks brothers.
I just so this was one of my notes, is that the Brooks Brothers was actually founded in 1818. So obviously we lost the male Brooks at some point, and just the sisters took over, I guess.
Yeah, Wade comments that perhaps on this world women have finally broken through the glass ceiling. Acting like acting like this is the first time that women are kind of in charge of this world, which is not true. They've done this before. This is a different episode, but And as you pointed out in your impressions, Jan, about there's no guns or war toys and the old Johnny Cage or Mortal Kombat thing. So I mean,
I think at the time, I'm sure it was amusing, or the joke, but I think the joke just aged really badly. And like I said, especially given there was this whole renaissance at that point in time of all these like warrior, kick-ass women on TV at the same time. So
yeah, that's true. I did like Quinn's quip there where he says, "I've had these duds on for the last 3 worlds." It's kind of a nice touch to remind us that they are sliding and sometimes don't have time to change clothes. They're probably some worlds where they're on the run the whole time, or just they're only there for a few hours, what have you. So yeah, kind of a nice in-universe flavor.
Although they're incredibly clean considering what they've been through.
Yeah, that's true.
I was gonna say, or maybe they're trying really hard not to get involved, and so it's like they can't really interact with anybody. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And then of course Rembrandt thinks that they found a world where he's a superstar again because all the women start going nuts.
Yeah.
His head in the clouds. But when they're in that whole situation, again, the guys really seem way too enthusiastic about the prospect of this is maybe a world where there are no men. And Arturo has that line, "Gentlemen, we made a slide to heaven."
Right. And one thing,
I'm not a horn dog. I'm a straight dude, but like, I'm not that horny. Like, come on. I'm not thinking that all the time. It's like, come on.
And actually, because we were talking about the Beatles before, and it's weird because today in our time is the day that the Beatles, the anniversary of the day the Beatles came to the U.S. Landed in New York. But one of the things, like when they first, like all the women rushed them, all I could think of was actually like the way the Beatles were treated, and that women and to some extent some male fans too would just completely surround them, like tear their hair, cut their hair, tear their clothes, and it was actually traumatic. I mean, guys in their head may think, oh, this is great, I want women to just be running after me and fighting over me, except it got really old really quick with them. So for some reason it just like that scene really like clicked in my head of like, yeah, you think you want this, but if you were spending all your days being chased by large hordes of women who just wanted to tear you apart, you wouldn't be so happy with it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And they're taken away in the van to the processing center by the BRP, which is the Bureau of Repopulation. So are they not getting it at this point that like almost immediately, like maybe this is not such a good thing? Because they're still like, even when they're there, I feel like they're still like, even Arturo's kind of smiling at everybody, and it's like, well, they're in the police station, right? And then they're getting taken away. So it's like, they're just kind of like, oh, this is like kind of interesting. I mean, I was thinking about it earlier today. Quinn seems to be the only one who is kind of level-headed. He's like, guys, we got arrested for a reason. And it's like, let's not like jump the gun. But Arturo and Rembrandt are just kind of like, I don't know, they're like really like, oh, all these women are all over us. It's like, I don't know.
It makes sense for Rembrandt because he's kind of like, that's his default setting. But Arturo is like, man, aren't you like smarter than this? You can't figure out that this might not be a good situation. Yeah. Because he hasn't gotten any action in a while, so
maybe, yeah,
maybe that's it.
And then it did like that announcement when you see Arturo walking, and it was just that Sliders-esque type, like Dr. Morris, you are needed in stimulation room 16. Like, okay, I know what that means. Am I reading too much into the fact that the first guy on the Breeder of the Month plaque was a black dude? I don't know. Maybe am I reading too much?
It's one of those things where it might. I mean, they might not have meant it, but it's the undercurrent there isn't great.
Maybe that says something about what I don't know.
No, I mean, honestly, if you think about the history of like slavery and the history of like the way the men were treated there, it's really a dicey thing. It's not the smartest thing they could have done. So you're not, even if it's just, it was, thinking. Even if they hadn't intended it that way, the subtext is not great.
Yeah. And I think it made sense that Australia would be far enough away from the poison gas cloud to suffer the fewest male casualties. But also earthprime.com pointed it out. I was looking earlier today. They're like, if this all happened in Iraq, that Australia is actually closer to Iraq than you would think. Like,
it sounds like the Iraqis initiated the attack, but it wouldn't necessarily have happened in Iraq.
You don't think it happened in Iraq? It probably was just okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are so few men apparently in North America.
Okay.
But it's possible something backfired and they got hit with it too.
Yeah, that's kind of,
I don't know. That's just my head.
Yeah.
And also, they said it's a virus, right? So maybe that
it had to do with
viral transmission also. That in terms of carriers.
Yes.
Yeah, because Australia, at least, in terms of other goods, they've got very strong quarantine laws down there. So it's very possible that they didn't, whatever the carrier was, and we don't know, they didn't get it as much down there.
Right.
So. Yeah, that's a very good point. as long as we're talking about other countries, is this the first time we've had a Canada reference on sliders? Because they announced on the news that they are the men that have escaped from an enemy breeding camp in Canada.
I feel like they had mentioned that maybe just I don't know. It's hard to tell. I don't remember. And they talk about the patriotic duty, which this is sounding like a reverse version of The Handmaid's Tale. And I'm kind of repeating myself in some of the notes, but I'll just kind of, as I was looking through it, but I'm just saying it here, like, I don't know if it's just the 90s mentality, or, as we said, this is written by two men, or maybe it's a combination of both of those factors. Again, this just seems really icky. That's just like the thinking about the prospect of hundreds or perhaps thousands of women throwing themselves at them. It's like this. I said it before. It feels like a double standard. Much. I don't know. It's just like, I don't know.
No, I agree with you. Just because you mentioned patriotic, also one of the things I also noticed at the toy shop, there was an ad of like a baby doll, and it was actually called Baby Patriot. So I think it ties in with all the other patriotic stuff that we're getting thrown at, and I think that is like a very, very 90s like smack at what was going on. So yeah.
So they're having that conversation with, I've forgotten his name. Is it David?
David, I think.
David, yeah.
Is that it? Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So they're having that conversation with David in the steam room, and I think Quinn mentions they're only down to 59 hours before they have to slide. So that means quite a bit of time has passed since they arried. They should have had this all.
Figured out by now. Left either. That's like
no.
Well, that's 2.5 days, right? So
less than 2 days and 11 hours, I guess. So 2.5 days.
So then I didn't realize this. I missed it. I guess when we saw El Cid, it was like the last episode. I assumed that shot in the credits was from El Cid because Jerry O'Connor is literally doing the voiceover, like San Francisco being a maximum security prison. And they're showing this shot of them escaping. And I'm like, wait, that's not El Cid. That's this episode. Like, what? They didn't even get it right in the credits, really?
That's a nice catch, but there is no prison break in El Cid. So I guess.
Yeah, that's true. But I didn't put two and two together, right?
Yeah, but I never noticed either that the scene in the opening credits was not from El Cid.
I assumed that it was because he says it, and that's part of the credits. And then there's that line that he says because he's talking about that they have the grounds to do all this, and they don't need grounds, Professor. Offend the wrong petty bureaucrat, your history. So I had it in the show notes for the previous one. Like, is this 1996 or is this 2025?
Right.
Like,
it's scary.
This is what's going on right now, and and it's interesting that they want to escape from the U.S. to Mexico because, as we said, there's no forced breeding. It's like a nice reverse of everything. I don't know what the deal is with the Chia Man thing. That was kind of
that was weird.
Actually, all right. I thought was really funny. I thought it was really funny. Clever. Like, I mean, I think it was just like, okay, let's see how many like dick jokes we can work in with a Chia pet. Well, if you don't want him as tall,
size, like, my
exactly.
God, innuendo, like okay.
Of course, but again, like written by men because most men are more obsessed with size than women are for the most part. So.
I know, and it was
I thought that at least was clever. That was like more that was funnier than the dolls and that kind of stuff. So
it's very sliders, but and I feel like it was like it was supposed to be like, remember like the real world thing with it was like the Amazing Bargains. We saw it. Remember, Mike?
I was thinking like Home Shopping Network or one of those things. So
I do like the TV listings. Again, the Remy's reading from that TV guide whatever it is, Sisters, The Outlaw Years, Hanging with Mrs. Cooper, and The Fresh Princess of Bel-Air.
He was so upset by that.
Oh, God. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I think this is where Arturo does comment that there's no in vitro fertilization, no donor eggs, and that he could help, society repopulate within a generation and a half if they would just listen to him. But maybe somebody on this world will get there eventually. We don't know what happens after they slide, but maybe they'll get beyond this forced breeding and finally figure out a scientific solution.
So there's that line that Rembrandt says, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own country," which I realized that he got that from the Bible, apparently. So I was wondering where he heard that line from. That just seemed like he knew that by heart. I guess that kind of falls in line with he had the roots back to the church from Last Days.
Oh, right.
I guess.
Yeah.
So okay. So maybe okay. So I guess there's a merit to that. I just felt it was a weird thing that he said, like just out of nowhere, but I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, something I forgot to mention before, which actually also irked me. They were in the steam room, right? Which is warm and it's damp. Yeah. That's the antithesis of what you want with sperm production. When people have infertility problems, the first thing they say is, to stay cool, dry, wear loose clothing instead of tighty whities because they want air flowing. So putting men that you want to, be breeding and impregnating women in a steam room, like what? Do they have apparently they have no scientists on this entire planet, and
well, maybe they also want their men to be relaxed after their interactions.
Yeah.
Again, this must be another thing with the men writing this.
I mean, but 5 times a day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mike, you commented on the when Wade comes.
Well, this is just before they reunite with Wade, I guess. But I love that reunion because Wade totally fakes them out on who had the timer. I was seriously thinking, oh shit, like what happened to it? Where did it go? And then Wade's like, ta-da! She got me.
She really pulled it up well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And okay, so
and that's right before the raid.
Here we go again. Yeah, the raid happens, and so the thing that gives them away is that one of the men forgot to put the toilet seat back down, and that's how they figure out that there are guys here because the toilet seat is up.
She couldn't have possibly been cleaning her bathroom or anything, right?
Yeah.
It's oh man, yeah, I cringed at that.
That was my thought too. But it's a very silly joke.
Really?
It's a pretty old cliche, but I thought it was a nice way to lighten the kind of the dark mood and the tense situation. But it also highlights how paranoid and desperate these people are to keep their breeders from escaping. They're they're grasping at straws any reason they can tear a place apart. On the 1% chance there might be a man hiding in the house.
Yeah,
but so it's a flimsy excuse. However, I think the law enforcement of this world is given a lot of leeway.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, but that was I kind of rolled my eyes. I'm like, really? Come on.
Yes.
Yeah. Same. I mean, it's a cliche for a reason, so I'm not arguing that this is true. This happens, but it's you couldn't come up with a better clue or a better, sign that there might have been a guy here than that.
Yeah. All right. I guess this is where we kind of need to talk about the thing. So her name is Jane, right? She's picking him up after he gets hit with after he gets tranked, basically, and then she asks him that favor. I know they stretch it out a little bit for the second half of the episode, but I guess we should just bring it up now about what we think about this plot. I guess.
Go ahead, Jane.
Well, no, I already brought it up. I found it really gross, and it's just again, it like what Damon said before. If it had been flipped the other way, people would be tearing their hair and freaking out, and rightly so. It's just it's sexual harassment. It's, it's exploitation. It's like, yeah, I'll let you go, but you have to do this thing for me. And it just like, it just didn't sit well. I mean, I get, yeah, her husband died. She was desperate for a baby. And they've got this whole, thing where if you're too old, if you're not attractive enough, blah, 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 you're not gonna, you're not allowed to. But it just felt like out of nowhere. And again, like, okay, Quinn gets this thing because he hasn't been the horn dog. So now he gets, a chance to get some action too. And it's like, no. And she was like, Mrs. Hill's cookies or something. So she's like this nice lady who, she's a CEO who runs this company of basically Mrs. Fields cookies.
Right.
At the time. And like, oh, my mother used to buy her coffee cake. So yeah, sure, I'll impregnate you. Like, what?
He doesn't agree right away, but.
Yeah, it just felt like really... It did not work for me. Again, the sentiment made sense, but it felt really ham-handed in the way it was written. At least for me.
This is one of the plot holes that kind of took me out of the flow of the episode a bit. Like, why was she driving down that road at that particular point and then pick up Quinn just because she sees him there? Is it because she thought she was being a good Samaritan by picking him up, or was she just out on the hunt, hearing there were men on the run and hoping to find one to be her sperm donor? Like,
it seemed really convenient that she happened to be right there when he needed her.
Yes, it was a little too contrived.
Get in the car. Like, that seemed very,
Yeah, and if it had been Arturo instead of Quinn, would she have picked him up because he wasn't so high? Because, Quinn is a good-looking guy. So it's just, the whole thing was, no.
that whole thing. And she's like, well, maybe I want to be taken advantage of or something like that. And that's when he's pulling the shirt over. And that's when he's got that double take and they kind of zoom in on his face.
Yes.
He realizes, like, wait, I could get some action right now.
Yeah.
I thought it was not a... I didn't think he wanted it, though. The look on his face was more like a look of shock and, oh, that's what you're after. I'm not sure I'm into that.
Yeah.
Because she's probably old enough to be his mother.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I do kind of commend. Like, he is saying too. He's like, well, I don't want to just be a father and not be there for this kid, which is like he does have a little bit of common sense. Yeah. So I do commend that choice. Like, at least he didn't seem like that. Just like that's all. Like, sex is the only thing on his mind. Like that.
Right.
So so getting to that though, like, we don't know what's going to happen there, but like when Arturo is captured by the Australians, and then the guard closes the door, and you hear here's that porno.
But she was already undressing before we heard it. Yeah,
he was starting to and he's just rolling his eyes like, oh, good Lord, and then they just cut away. So, did something happen that I think might have happened there? Like, they just kind of cut away before they, and if so, isn't that rape basically?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did something happen there? I don't know. We don't.
Yeah.
Do you think so? You think that was Arturo basically?
They leave it to your imagination, Damon.
I guess. I don't know.
But at least they served him some Vegemite. Like,
Vegemite.
I don't know why.
Another cliche. Yeah.
Is it is yeast paste supposed to be good for virility? I have no idea. I mean, it just.
Well, the Australians in this episode seem to think so.
Yeah, I mean, Vegemite and Marmite, I stay far away from it anyway. I think it's the grossest thing in the world. Sorry, Australians and Brits. But I just it's one of those things. Is there, is it supposed to do something? Because it is, like beer. Is it supposed to do something physically, just even if it's just giving you salmon or something? I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. When my sister came to visit back in October, I think that's she brought some Vegemite because my wife had asked about it, and she's finally brought it, and I think Amada tried it. She's like, that's interesting. I'm trying to remember. I don't think that she liked it very much, and my sister was like, yeah, okay, it's a thing.
It's one of those things where I think if you grow up with it, and also if you like the taste of like beer and that, it's better. I'm just like I'm not a beer drinker either. I just can't abide the taste. So I smell Vegemite, and it's just like, that's fermented yeast, not my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried it once when I was in England, and I wasn't a fan. No.
Yeah.
This is just my trying to find locations where filming happened. Obsession. So the sign, I think they've made that sign that says Australian Consulate 1873 and put it on the wall. I'm really curious what that building actually is, where it's located, because the actual current Australian consulate in Vancouver is in an office building downtown. So, and I imagine a lot of the consulates in cities aren't out in these big estate houses. Usually that's where an embassy would be.
Right.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm not begrudging the writers or anything about it. I'm just really curious what this house actually is in real life. But
right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from New York, so
anyway.
all the embassies and all the consulates are office buildings, or at least older buildings in New York City. They're not estates at all. They're all there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I was saying about how Arturo is, it's just, it's like the humor behind this is just like, oh, he's just like rolling his eyes, good Lord. And it's like, so like that being said, this is also like just seems problematic with what they're trying to, with the humor they're trying to do with like Rembrandt now dressing like a woman, and they're kind of laughing. Like there's like, this guy's wife has just been taken away, and he's just like kind of like they're looking at him like he's trying to walk like a woman, and
that actually was timing wise. That's actually a joke from the Birdcage and La Cage aux Folles.
Right.
It goes all the way back because they're trying to get Alban or Albert, depending on which thing you're watching, to not be a drag queen anymore and to walk like a man. So now we've like flip the script and now walk like a woman because you're walking too much like a man. And the whole thing with the mustache. I mean, to me, it's like very 90s, again, very 90s or earlier humor about, oh, look, men in drag,
right.
Yeah, it just, your life, his life depends on it, and he's obsessing about how he can't shave his mustache.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Well, wait until season 4, Remy. Yeah, wait until then. That mustache is going at some point. Yeah. I did think Wade's line was pretty funny when she's well, who is she? So who is she telling this? Oh, this is when they're doing
this is outside the consulate. Yeah.
Oh, when she's talking. Okay, that's right. She's outside the consulate, and she says, "Who's going to mean more to your handlers back in Canberra? A national treasure, or an American transvestite and an overweight Englishman?" And then Rembrandt was like, "Oh man, that's cold."
Yeah,
that was funny. That was a funny line.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just had such a problem with this. It's like she's basically bartering the escapees with Trevor Grant because he's worth at least 1,200 pregnancies tops. Like, again, if this script was about women being treated like baby-making machines.
Ugh, yeah, it was gross.
Yeah, this is, again, like you're treating these men like, it's like, what's the thing I'm thinking of? This is not like a sports team where you're trading your best players. That's not what this is. That's what I was getting at with this. It's like they're treating it like oh, this is no big deal. So that's where that's kind of where my issues were with this episode was.
Yeah, and again, like it ties in even even if it's with white people, it still ties in with like a lot of the tropes of slavery. And, like, oh, we've got this buck here and he'll give you, he'll impregnate all these women. She'll have more slaves. And it just like, it touched on a bunch of things to me. It just like did not sit well with me because it's like human trafficking. It's gross. So,
yeah. Human trafficking. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just like, oh yeah, we'll just, bring these guys to somewhere else so they can knock up other women. Like, ew. Stop.
Diversify the gene pool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like how Wade kind of plays a leading role in this episode.
Yeah.
She's kind of the hero. She's the one rescuing the men. There's another role reversal there, as opposed to, I guess, the stereotypical damsel in distress. But I admire her ability here to manipulate both sides. She manages to convince the Australians to do this. She gets the doctor and the police officer, who you think would have their wits more about them, but but I expect they're both panicking about the escape and the potential loss of these men, and that just desperation has really set in. And she manages to, you know, kind of get everybody ready for the slide except Quinn, who's just disappeared, and they have no clue. And what'd she say to Remy later? She says, do you have faith, or
you believe in miracles?
Do you believe in miracles? Yeah, do you believe in miracles?
Because it's like they're just hoping that Quinn will show up. They have no idea.
Because they did say to meet at the statue at 3:00. Yeah.
Right. And I guess she just assumed that, well, he didn't get captured by anybody, so something happened. I didn't realize until the rewatch too. Like, they really played that up about each one was saying, it's like, oh, this is what the Australians want. Oh, this is what they wanted. Like, they said literally the same line, one after the other. I caught it when I rewatched. I'm like, oh, like, okay, I see. They're really being played.
Yeah, neither side knows why they're meeting under a bridge, but
the
Wade
bridge,
had it all planned out.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I'll give Wade some credit for setting it all up and pulling it off. So.
So really, the one last thing I'll say that on top of all this is just thinking about this idea using men as breeders every day, like what we say before, like 5 or 6 times a day, or something, with like all of these women. And this raises a lot of moral questions, and you're basically going to have entire generations of offspring that are half siblings with each other, because they're going to have the same father, and they might not even realize it. How are you going to move forward with humanity? Isn't this trying to create a lot more problems that you could possibly have some incestual relationships and not realize it? Did they think this through when they wrote this episode? Like, I don't know.
Well, they might have to track it.
Okay.
I think Iceland has because they're such a small population. I think they actually have a registry where you have to, you know, if you're going to date somebody, you have to make sure you're not related to them first.
Okay.
So that might be something they have to implement at some point. But that's a good point, because so far we know their scientific background apparently isn't great when it comes to genetics. So.
I mean, seems to me that's probably the other reason they're excited that they suddenly have Quinn and Arturo and Rembrandt, because they're like new introduction to the gene pool, which is good, you know, from a genetic standpoint. But and the other thing that bothered me was just like going through, like, at one point when we found out that David and his wife are together, and David says something like, "It's the love that dares not speak its name," and that irked me, because that's a line from a poem by Alfred Lord Douglas, aka Bosie, who was Oscar Wilde's lover, and it's always been tied to homosexuality. I mean, that's the whole point of it, and the fact that he suddenly is like using it for, you know, this het marriage was just like a little weird to me. Like, did we have to use that line? Let's not equate these two. Thank you very much.
No.
So, because it's just like a famous thing, you know, tied in with Oscar Wilde and going forward. But it's in a lot of like gay literature, and it's just like, please. The people who wrote this just, I don't know. They a lot of it's just like the eternal logic. You know, we were saying, like the genetics and the science, and like when, where, and what. And even without the internet in 1996, there's still encyclopedias and books. They, you know. Very quick study, you know. I don't know.
And less, it was just kind of like an aside that I thought about was that Sliders just does not have the greatest track record when they incorporate breeding camps into the narrative. And that's all I'm going to say. That's for later on down the road. Let's just remember that. The breeding camp thing is not like a good thing to joke about. Let's leave it at that. Okay, let's leave it at that. All right.
And then we have the ambiguous ending also with Mrs. Hills. instead of Mrs. Fields. I just realized, just got the pun there, but which, like, did they not? Is Quinn a father? We don't know.
Yeah. Well, I like how it ends with quite the getaway. She initiates the timer while driving, and then I'm sure, sadly, we never get to hear more about Diana, David, or the maroon van.
Right. But Mike,
I would love to see the continuation.
Yeah.
But that, or even like to Mike, meet them at some other point. So
Right. Yeah. But also, Mike, weren't they talking in the previous episode and El Cid about, even though these were like in production order, El Cid is before this, but like, Arturo getting on about the more people we take with us, the more it drains, and we risk the catastrophic failure thing. They're driving this van through like even like this even bigger thing. So
so it's 2 extra people plus another vehicle.
Also
right.
But you're right, Jan. That final scene is I kind of cringe laughed. It was like the dramatic pan to the photo of Quinn from the fireplace, and she's got this wistful smile on her face, and we're just left to whether he donated or not.
But where did she get the photo of him? It's like, this like,
she must have had a Polaroid camera.
It's just like, this really good like portrait. Did they go to Sears? Like, when did he take this photo?
It's in front of the fireplace that she's looking at.
Yeah.
In the photo, he's in front of the fireplace.
Yeah. Okay.
With the fire going.
So she must have had a Polaroid camera, or she's or something. It's
but like there's zero guarantee she's getting a baby out of it, because same with Arturo and the guard, if they indeed did copulate there, because pregnancies aren't always just one and done. It's sometimes it takes a lot of work.
It's not that easy. No. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and if she was older, there's even not that older women can't get pregnant, but a lot of times it's harder, or more difficult in terms of like egg production, all that. So it's just again, like where was their head when they were writing? It's like no internal logic.
Well, to me, it's the interpretation. Like, people were assuming that the pregnancies happened just because they had sex, but I don't think that's what the writers intended. I think they left both ambiguous on purpose.
Yeah. We never saw the Australian guard again, so we don't know what happened there. If she just Arturo showed her a good time, or she showed Arturo a good time. Who knows?
Right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that pretty much sums up the plot. Anything more we want to say about it before we have some of the lines and all this other stuff? And anything else we want to?
No, I think I've said enough.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we covered it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I guess other than let's just hope that our country is not headed for this, because
it's very scary, very very scary.
Yeah. Like I said, this is like The Handmaid's Tale. It's like that's a lot more serious too. You watch that show and
yes.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't watch the show because I read the book, and I think the show came out just about the time, like 8 years ago, give or take, and it was just like there's too much weirdness going on. I can't like watch this. It's too upsetting to me.
I've been telling myself that I feel like I maybe need to read that book because it's not going to be fiction pretty soon.
I read it when it first came out, like when I was in my 20s or whenever the hell it came out. I read it back then, and it was very unsettling, but made you think. And now it's just like it's not supposed to be a guidebook. Thank you very much.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
These, we're dealing with this Christian nationalism and other stuff, and it's very, very concerning.
Yes.
Especially when you're, not a Christian like me. Among other things,
Right.
Like anybody who's doesn't fall into that category is in deep trouble right now.
If you're not straight, white, rich, male, where you're getting, I don't know. Anyway, this is not a political show, but
right.
we can't help but get a little bit just thinking about how this is a little almost too relevant to things going on in the United States right now. what certain people want and whatever. All right, memorable lines. You have most of them, Mike.
Yeah. Well, I liked when they first arrived. Arturo says in response to somebody saying it looks normal enough. Well, he says, "Yeah, well, it often looks normal. It's just madness underneath." Which, yes, this world, it certainly rings true. And I love Remy's assumption when the women all start crowding around. Oh, this must be another world where I'm a superstar.
Right.
And then, of course, at the breeding facility in the exercise room, they talk about how they're lucky to have Trevor Grant, and Arturo's response is, "Lucky? Allowing that idiot to breed at that rate could set your civilization back by 10,000 years."
Yeah, and I liked when Quinn is going out there and they're trying to tell him not to leave, and Arturo says, "You'd last out there about as long as a pork chop in a pool of piranha."
Right. That was one of my lines that I picked up.
Yeah. And then Arturo, man, he has a lot of good ones. And at the end, he's being offered to stick around. He says, "Frankly, madam, I would sooner have my liver eaten by a vulture."
Right. All right, so our final thoughts, our ratings. I might increase mine a bit, but so I'll go first. So for all the things that I kind of said, I had some issues with it. It kind of, I feel it was. I know you're having a different opinion, Mike, but to me it was like,
yeah.
I remember. I think when I first saw this episode in the mid '90s, I think I felt it wasn't one of the better ones. I didn't hate it, but like I also just, even back then I had some issues with it. But I kind of have those issues even more so now. Maybe being a parent, being a father, and thinking maybe being more mature in my masculinity and the kind of world we live in now. And it's, so I originally had 6. Maybe I'll bring it up to 6.5. I'll say 6.5 cans of Vegemite out of 10.
Yeah, I think I would have been around 13 when this came out, and I remember this one, and I remember enjoying it at the time. So, but my rewatch, my retro review would be 8.5 breeders of the month out of 10.
Okay, yeah, I think I may have seen this one because I kind of watched it intermittently, and I would have been, this is 96, so I would have been 33. So I vaguely remember it, and even back then going, but now in retro, I think it's even worse. I don't hate it. I'm not like so horribly offended by it that, oh my God, I could never watch this again. It just, there was a lot of eye rolling. And like I said, first thing, like, this was written by men. So I'm going to say I'd probably give it like a 5 Chia Men. Out of 10.
Okay,
so
that's a good one. Oh, you're the lowest. Okay.
Yeah, but I like the shorter Chia Men. So
that's nice.
That was a good one. That's nice. I should have picked that one, but that was a good one. All right.
Yeah, it was okay. Again, this was not one of the better ones. So
yeah. All right. Well, that was our discussion of Love Gods. So, all right. So, Jan, thank you again for coming on. This was a fun discussion.
Yeah. Thanks, Jan.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, and I'm glad you did think of me with this one. And hopefully, you won't get like a zillion, feedbacks screaming about, woke. But if you do, I apologize.
No.
Hey, people know where we stand. I'm pretty sure. So
Yeah, no, that's fine. I appreciate it, and it was a fun one to watch because there was. I like things, where I can comment on them. Even if I don't like them, as long as I can find things to discuss or like things, and not just like it's so boring. I have nothing to say about it. So.
Yeah. Well, if you want to remind everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on Facebook still, and Jan Fennick, or I guess it's like Jan.Fennick. And you can find me on Instagram at total_Janarchy. It's like anarchy with a J in front. And you can find me as Janarchy on Blue Sky. So I guess janarchy.bsky.social.
.social, right,
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So next up in our production order is The Good, the Bad, and the Wealthy. We are definitely going to be joined by Eric Dreiling again for that one. He is going to join us for that week. Yeah. And do you want to take us out, Mike, or should I do it? You can do it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, please be sure to like and subscribe. Share your opinions down below in the comment section, and we'll do a roundup in the future. In the meantime, you can also check out our website, fandomentanglement.com. Easier access to all our videos and the summaries. If you want to get in touch with us, it's pretty easy. We are at fandom.entanglement@gmail.com for email. Facebook is at Fandom Entanglement. And we are also on the Blue Sky, fandomentanglement.bsky.social.
Yep. All right. So until next time, guys, I'm Damon.
And I'm Mike.
And I'm guest host Jan.
Yeah. And we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye.